Alright, Astro subscribers, welcome back to another video of the Rahu and Ketu series, or in terms of Western astrology, the North and South Node of the Moon analysis, how to read these placements within your chart or other people's charts, and how to figure out how these sort of planetary astronomical placements relate to your psychology under the doctrines of the discipline of Western astrology or also Vedic astrology. Okay, so today we're going to be doing the North Node in the sign of Sagittarius and the South Node in the sign of Gemini. This is obviously the inversion of the third thing in the series we did, which is North Node in Gemini and South Node in Sagittarius. If you remember from that series, those people rejected religion, belief systems in general, whether that's theistic, atheistic, doesn't matter. All belief systems generally are heavily viewed with a lot of skepticism, and they view the ability to think for yourself as first and foremost. And the cost of that is that they cannot necessarily benefit from the good parts of those belief systems often, but the upside of that is that they can generate new ideas from their own independent thinking and their communication with others. So it's a very independent sort of person who relies on their own wits rather than the wisdom of a tradition. So this is the opposite of that. And the obligatory explanation of what Rahu and Ketu, or North and South Node of the Moon, are. They're mathematical points that exist in the sky that are related to the Moon's orbit, which is an ellipse, and the parts of that ellipse when it's closest to Earth change in their position, and the constellations behind them change. And these points are viewed as forces that are significant enough, just like the sun and the moon and the patterns of Mercury and Venus and all these other planets. These are viewed as significant enough mathematical points, even though there's no planet there, to constitute having like a direct correlation to our psychological and sociological states. So that's why these are important. Now, they're always 180 degrees from each other because, again, the two closest points to the center of ellipse are always going to be 180 degrees away from each other, just like the two furthest points on the ellipse are. And because of that, the opposite sort of archetypes get displayed in each of these, in whatever signs and constellations and whatnot are behind these placements. So that means that, they're always on an axial opposition. So if, for instance, North Node is in Sagittarius, South Node is going to be in Gemini, and vice versa. So the way astrology is set up, the things that are opposite each other, they complement each other, but they also oppose each other at the same time. So it's not like they're enemies, they're just different ways of viewing the same thing. So for instance, Gemini and Sagittarius both deal with information, but Sagittarius is information obtained from outside sources, whereas Gemini is information obtained from within. And likewise, Taurus and Scorpio both deal with stability, but Taurus is the stable state and Scorpio is the counterposition, which is stability through being able to deal with instability, and both of those are important. So, again, a brief refresher. Rahu, the North Node of the Moon, it is representative of things that we're not good at, but we're obsessive about and we want to be good at them. And it is related to consumption of information, consumption of attention, consumption of food, material things you don't need but you want anyway, things like gems, nice cars, clothes, that kind of thing. It's a very materialistic planet. It's a very anxious planet. It needs everything now. It's immoral. Ketu, on the other hand, is the opposite of Rahu. It is detached from material things. It is designed to It is designed to forcibly detach you from the material world and to sort of remove the anxiety and traps of the material world by forcing you to not focus on that area of your life. So for instance, in the last video we talked about K2 and Taurus. It didn't make you lose things necessarily, but it made things come to you in a way that you didn't have to worry about material things like clothes and food and that kind of thing. And in the video before that, with the South Node in Aries, it made you not have to worry about your personal ego, the illusion of yourself, the self-esteem, because every time you try to speak up for yourself and not act in the service of another, it will confuse you and sort of befuddle your mind. And that is very much what South Node in Gemini does. This also goes for South Node being in the third house of your chart in any sign. Anytime you try to formulate your own opinion, to create something original, to make art, to write, this will sort of confuse you and make you talk about something else. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So for instance, I've talked briefly about planets in conjunction with the nodes, but generally speaking, if something, especially an active planet like the Sun or Mars, is in conjunction with K2, what will happen is these people will actually become sort of like really, really powerful, potent writers or artists with this position. But if K2 is just by itself and doesn't have any aspects from anything else in Gemini or the third house of your chart, it will make a person who can be dyslexic. It will make a person, like almost everybody who has dyslexia, who I've read their chart, they have South Node in the third house, or in Gemini, or in an air sign in general, because air always deals with communication. So these people often have great difficulty expressing themselves in terms of language. They might have sort of a hard time learning to read, that kind of thing. They might be late learning to read. This does not mean that they are stupid by any means of or any stretch of the imagination. It just means that they have a difficulty expressing themselves to others. And when they try to, because they were already good at that in their last life, or maybe if you don't believe in multiple lifetimes, they're already good at that. They're born good at it. So it's not something they need to focus on. So their mind will get confused when they try to do it. Now, the only time that this will not happen in terms of their communication is when they are preaching, is when they are teaching something they already know. If they get up in front of a large group of people, if these people get up in front of a large group of people and start teaching something that they really understand, that they've researched well, that they really believe, then their speech impediment will generally go away, because Sagittarius is a performing sign. It is an active sign. It wants to gain reputation, gain knowledge through teaching other people, through preaching its gospel, whatever that gospel is, whether it's religious, whether it's a professor at a university, whether it's whether it's a form of music, maybe. They want to be well received for their teaching. They want to accomplish spreading a message to achieve that status as a intellectual. So if these people are in small talk, in small group conversation, their minds will sort of wander and drift, and they will become confused. If they're writing without the intention of publishing, their minds will get confused and wander and drift. However, the second they start publishing things and start speaking from the heart and using their throat chakra to project over large amounts of people, then their dyslexia and their speech impediment and that kind of thing will go to the background, and they will focus on learning what they're supposed to learn in this life, which is public speaking, mass communication, teaching of a particular belief system or ideology. And this will be very good for them. So that is effectively how this placement works. these are the type of people who they're very quiet in a group, but the second they get behind a microphone in front of a large group of people, they're like a totally different person. Like they're loud, they're you know, progressive, they're preaching, they're you know, spreading their message. But if you would meet them on the street and you just start talking to them about like the weather or something, they're going to be like, sorry, what? Like that kind of thing, you know? And you would never guess that this person is like, you know, a great performer or a great public speaker because they're so sort of awkward in their small talk. But yeah, that kind of polarity gets produced here. So yeah, that is the North Node in the sign of Sagittarius and the South Node in the sign of Gemini. And I will talk to you next time. And we're going to be doing North Node in the sign of Capricorn and South Node in the sign of Cancer next. So yeah, check that out.